Today we're taking a little step away from Jujutsu Kaisen character psychology and looking at someone completely different. Ayanokoji from Classroom of the Elite, because his psychology is on a complete different level. Let me ask you something real quick. What would a human look like if you removed all the emotions completely, like fear, empathy, and hesitation? Just put pure logic in him, because that is not a robot, that's Ayanokoji. And here's the part that nobody really talks about. He's not hiding his emotions. He might actually be experiencing something closer to emotional blunting, which in psychology is when your feelings are reduced to almost nothing. And once you understand that, everything about him becomes like more disturbing, because he's not playing the same game as everyone else. He's operating on a complete different system. So in this video, we're going to be breaking down the Ayanokoji psychology and trying to answer one question. Is he still human, or is he just perfectly programmed weapon? Let's get into it. Everything about Ayanokoji starts with the White Room, but this is not just a training, it's a psychological conditioning at the highest level. There's this idea in psychology called the tabula rasa. It means a blank slate. The idea that we're born without a built-in personality and everything we become is shaped by experience. But Ayanokoji wasn't just a blank slate. He was subject to something closer to behavioral conditioning. Basically a system where only correct actions are rewarded and anything else gets punished or erased until the person starts acting exactly how the system wants. And over time, that creates something dangerous. Conditioned dissociation, where your brain learns to separate thinking from feeling. You can function without being affected emotionally. Look at the flashbacks, the empty rooms, identical children, no individuality, and then that moment a child collapses. A normal response would be a panic, right? Ayanokoji, nothing, no reaction, no emotion, just observation. That's not discipline. That's what happens when identity formation is disrupted, which is when someone never properly develops a sense of self, because they were never given a normal emotional or social experience growing up. In a normal development, a child builds a self through relationship and emotional feedback. In the White Room, the self is treated as a flaw. So instead of personality, you get optimization. Ayanokoji didn't just lose emotion, he lost the need for it. And when you remove emotion, you're also removing hesitation, fear, and doubt, which sounds powerful until you realize what it costs. Now let's get into his most famous line. People are tools. This isn't just him being cold, even though it's the coldest line to say, but this lines up almost perfectly with Machiavellianism, which is a personality trait where someone focuses on manipulation, long-term strategy, and using others to reach their goals, usually without emotional attachment. But here's what makes Ayanokoji different. Most Machiavellian people still feel emotion, they just ignore them. Ayanokoji might not have enough emotion input to ignore it in the first place. Look at the rooftop with Ruin. Ruin is driven by fear and dominance. Ayanokoji is calm, still. There's a moment where he's getting hit, and instead of reacting, he's analyzing damage. That's a full reliance on cognitive processing over emotional response, meaning he's thinking through everything logically instead of reacting instinctively. And this is where empathy comes in. Psychology splits empathy into two types: cognitive empathy, understanding what someone else is feeling, like reading their thoughts, and affective empathy, actually sharing their feelings with them. Ayanokoji is extremely high in cognitive empathy. He can predict behavior, reaction, even breaking point almost perfectly, but affective empathy almost non-existent. And that explains his relationship with Kei, because from the outside it looks real, but internally it's functional. This is called the instrumental attachment, where you maintain relationship because they're useful, not because you're emotionally connected. He protects her, but not because he feels for her, it's because she serves a role in his system, and that's what makes him dangerous. Because he doesn't just use people, he optimizes them, and most of the time, they don't even realize it. Now here's where Ayanokoji becomes something else entirely. He wants to lose, and that seems completely irrational until you understand the psychology behind it. This connects to something called existential ennui, which is a deep, almost empty kind of boredom that comes from feeling like nothing in life has meaning or surprises anymore. Because if you can predict everything and nothing feels engaging, then this becomes the paradox of certainty. When you're so sure of outcomes that life stops feeling like a challenge, and without challenge, your brain stops feeling stimulated. You can actually see this in the chess match with Sakayanagi. For a brief moment, he looks interested and focused because there's uncertainty. And uncertainty is something his brain is not used to, so what does he do? He starts creating stronger opponents. This is similar to self-imposed adversity, where people intentionally create challenges for themselves just to feel something again, to break out of a mental stagnation. But Ayanokoji's case, it goes deeper. He's testing reality itself, trying to find something, anything, that his system can predict. So far, nothing has succeeded. And that's the real issue. Not that he can't lose, but that nothing can even push him to that point, which turns life into something empty, not painful, just meaningless. So now everything connects. The White Room removed unpredictability and created stability, consistency, and control. But human connection, real connection, is unpredictable by nature. It doesn't follow logic, and that's where Ayanokoji's system starts to break down, because things like love and trust and emotional attachment doesn't fit into calculation. They introduce something called the emergent behavior, which means outcomes that cannot be fully predicted even if you understand all of the individual parts, and that's something Ayanokoji isn't built to handle, which is why characters like Kei matter. Not just for emotionally, but psychologically. She represents a variable his system can't fully solve. And if that variable ever becomes dominant, if he genuinely feels something, that wouldn't just change him, it would destabilize everything he is. So now we come back to the question, is Ayanokoji human, or is he just a system? Because right now he exists somewhere in between. He has a constructed identity and he has a functioning mind, but no clear emotional core. And that creates something rare. A person shaped almost entirely by deterministic conditioning, which means his behavior isn't really based on free choice, but on how he was designed and trained to respond. The only thing that can break that is something outside of logic: emotion, predictability, and loss. If Ayanokoji ever truly experiences those, it wouldn't just be a character development, it would be a system failure, and maybe that's the only way he becomes human again. So let me know what you think. Can Ayanokoji change? Or is he permanently stuck at the perfect product of the white room? If you enjoyed this, hit that like button and subscribe. We're going deeper into psychology breakdown like this, and I'll catch you in the next one.